Hi, this is Tony Farrelly here from road.cc, and I'm talking to Gerard Vroomen, founder and co-boss of Cervelo and the Cervelo test team. Hi, Gerard.
Hi, how you doing?
Not bad. Right, we've got a few questions I'd like to ask you. The first one is Cervelo are obviously a company that are associated with high-tech performance materials, and particularly carbon, in the last few years, and your carbon frames are probably setting the benchmark in terms of bicycle technology at the moment. But at some point, there's got to be a limit to what you can do with carbon. Do you think we're getting to that point?
No, I don't think so. I mean, of course, I'm thinking about that as well. And as things improve, you think it gets harder and harder to find improvements. But, for example, when we look at the aerodynamics, the difference between the P3 that we launched 3 years ago and the P4, that difference is bigger than between the P3 and the worst bike in the Pro Tour right now. So it's an enormous leap that we've been able to make forward still with the P4. And also on the road bikes, I think there's still plenty of room, and not just in aerodynamics. I think you have to see it, of course, that although the bike is more than 100 years old, a lot of these technologies are still fairly new, so there's still a lot of improvement that can be made in carbon technology and in aerodynamics and various things like that. So I think there's still a lot of room, but no doubt eventually we'll run out of things.
What about that's talking about the frame, essentially. What about all the sort of peripherals? I mean, I notice you've, the Cervelo test team, you've got together a group of other companies like Zip and 3T. Do you see working closely with those companies as being a part of the bike development in the future? Because wheels technology, the design of the fork, the bars working in sort of harmony with the rest of the frame in terms of the aero enhancements that they can give. Is that a way forward for Cervelo?
For sure. I mean, we've already started doing that. It used to be 10 years ago, if you would just design your frame and somebody else would be working on their wheels, and then you put them, both are good, you put them together, you got a good bike. But nowadays, to get those improvements, you need to really work in an integrated way. So when you look at our newest road bike, the S3, it's designed to work perfectly with certain wheels, with wheels that we know are at the cutting edge. So, we know that those are the kind of wheels that our customers will use anyway. So. And we try to optimize them as a group, and also with the P4, the new time trial bike, it's designed with specific wheels in mind, or specific wheels, a group of wheels. But we test them, to work very well with the head disc and a zip disc, because we know those are the leading discs out in the market. And if that frame doesn't work very well with the bad disc, that's no concern to us. They have to work well with the good disc. And so yes, in our development, we already take that into account. And the test team is another way that we can integrate that even more. We can, from scratch, start to develop a bike as a whole, as an integrated system.
You sort of preempted my next question, because I did assume that was probably the case, because, say, in the UK at the moment, Cervelos, you can only buy them as a frame rather than as a complete bike. Or the distributors only distribute the frame packages. Do you see yourself marketing complete bikes more in the future then, saying, here is the Cervelo P4 with this kit on it, and this is the ultimate incarnation of this bike?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of it. We already sell complete bikes, not in the UK, but in a lot of other markets we do. So a large portion of our sales already are complete bikes. But even if we don't sell complete bikes, of course, it doesn't mean we, can't tell people what the ideal way is to put that bike together. So, and with the test team, we really looked to work with those suppliers that we believe make the best equipment or have the most momentum towards developing new product. So yes, I think the team bike, the way we have it this year, is pretty close to perfect of technology that's currently available, and we hope that with that whole group together to make another step forward. So even if you're in a country where you can only buy the Cervelo frame set, you can still see from the test team what we believe close to the perfect setup would be.
And following on from that, then do you now already have any input into each other's products, if you see what I mean? Do you work with Zip on their wheels or 3T on their forks and say, oh, well, actually, we quite like, we think this would be a good way to go? And do they ever say to you, well, the way our fork design is looking or our wheel technology is working, this might have some impact on the next refinement you might want to make onto the Cervelo frame?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that already. I mean, there was before the test team, but now we have a forum where we see each other very often, so it makes it a little bit easier. But it's something that has been going on for a while already, especially because, for example, with wheels, there's now a trend in some aerodynamic wheels that they get wider and wider. But of course, that has repercussions for the frame, because in general, for aerodynamics, we'd like to make the chainstays and the seat stays very close to the wheel. Well, if the wheel gets bigger, I got to make sure that there's no interference between the two. So that's already been going on, and I expect that will be more. I mean, just as an example, we go every year in February, we go to the wind tunnel and we test a couple of the riders that we support. This year, when we go to the tunnel, it will not be just Cervelo, but Zip will be there, and Rotor will be there to test a new crank, and Vittoria will test a couple of tires, and Castelli will test their new skin suits. And so you already see that group coming together and developing products together to move forward.
I suppose it's a bit like the Formula One group that Trek put together for Armstrong back in the mid-90s, where they all had that sort of project, and they all worked to one end, as it were. I can see you're smiling there. Would you say it's not like that then?
I don't know. I was never there. I've just heard stories from people who were, so I can't really comment on it firsthand. So.
Fair enough. I mean, the other thing I was going to ask is, how does the feedback loop from the team work then? Are they constantly feeding back to you through the managers, or do you have sort of technicians coming to talk to them and the other sponsors, or is it at predetermined times, like when you go to the wind tunnel?
Well, we were 2 weeks into the project, so it's kind of hard to say how everything will work out. But right now, what we have set up is we have a group of 6 riders, led by Roger Hammond, who are testing a specific model that we want to make improvements on for the next 1 or 2 years. And so they'll be testing that benchmark against prototypes that we're building. And so that's a very specific project where, we give them a new prototype, they ride it for a couple of days, they give us the feedback, and we go on and make the next batch of prototypes. So that's the very structured approach that we have. But there's certainly also, the feedback that comes, without prompting, that people think, we'd be interested to do this or that, so I think it will come from many ways. So the structured way, certainly, if we have a certain project and we need feedback on it, then we go out and we look for it. But the riders are not shy either about giving their opinions on any part of the bike. And that's one of the reasons why these riders have chosen this team.
Is that one of the reasons you chose the riders that you've got? Because they're the sort of people who will communicate back to you, and they feel that I was talking to a couple of them, completely sort of casually. They were saying that they did, they'd always felt that feeding back on their bikes was important, and possibly maybe in the past some of them haven't felt that feedback has necessarily been acted upon. But
yeah. I think it's a two-way street. Of course, we try to choose riders who we thought would be able to give good feedback, but also riders who are interested in product development have sought out this team. So it's just a natural connection. I think we have a certain philosophy in this team, not just with regards to product development, but also in a lot of other areas. And so we're attracted to certain riders who seem to have that same philosophy, and likewise those riders are the most interested in riding for this team. So it's been a very, very natural connection that way, and I think that may also be the reason why over these months we've only talked to 27 riders on the men's side, and 25 of them are here. So that connection was always there, and once the riders felt like this is the right environment and the right kind of project that they would like to be involved in, everything else seemed to fall into place almost automatically.
2 more quick questions. One, I heard talking to somebody, they were saying that some of the riders in the early part of the season are going to be riding aluminium bikes. Is it the S1 aluminium bike? To me, that sounds like a very interesting project. Would you like to tell us some more about what's going on there?
Well, the S1 is probably the most underrated bike you will ever find in the store. I mean, that's a bike that has won Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Tour de l'Avenir, Paris-Nice. Like, it's won huge races, and it's available for under €2,000. Like, it's just an amazing value for money, and certainly better than most of what you will see in the pro peloton. So from that point of view, it's no hindrance to the riders to be trying out that bike, and we're trying to develop some new model ideas from that model. Not necessarily to replace it, but we have some ideas on how to change it. So we just want some feedback from these riders on the S1.
And would that be in aluminium?
Well, the S1 is in aluminium.
Yeah, so that's yeah. I presumed it would be, but it's just interesting to hear manufacturers talk about aluminium. That was one of the other questions I was going to ask you: is has it got a future? What other frame materials have a future? Can you see beyond carbon at the very top end?
No, there's nothing beyond carbon. There's just chemically, when you look at it, carbon is the final station in that sense. But I think carbon and aluminum or aluminium both have a good future, and the S1 sort of proves that out. Is when we give the S1 to a pro rider, they are absolutely blown away at how good that bike is for that amount of money. How comfortable it is, how stiff it is, how responsive, and I think it just goes to show that it's much better to have a good aluminum bike than a bad carbon bike. And there's just a lot of bad carbon bikes out there right now. And so there's just a certain price level where you cannot build a good carbon bike yet, and it's better to have a good aluminum bike there than a bad carbon bike. And I think that's it's not always an easy sell in the store because people are sort of blinded by this love for carbon. But we see all the time, if people test ride bikes at that price level, then it's usually the S1 that gets sold. If people just go for their thoughts, then it's usually a carbon bike that gets sold. But in the end, it's about riding and about the pleasure that you get from riding. So if after a test ride it means that the S1 is often the bike that gets sold, then that's what we want to focus on.
I mean, I suppose it could be said that aluminium's time at the top as the frame material was actually quite limited, and possibly the full extent of what could be done with it hadn't really been explored by the time it was superseded by carbon. Would you say it's a fair comment?
Yeah, I think, of course, the sex appeal of carbon fiber has sort of replaced everything else, and manufacturers have rushed to use carbon anywhere they can, whether it makes sense or not. And certainly, as a frame material, carbon in a lot of applications makes sense, and in aerodynamic wheels it does too. In some other parts it certainly doesn't.
Applications you say it doesn't make sense in?
Yeah, there's plenty of applications where it doesn't make sense, but I think it's not. Again, it's not only that. It's not that some applications doesn't make sense. It also depends on, you can use carbon in a smart way and in a not so smart way. So in the end, it's not so much about the material you use, but how you use it, and that comes back to having the proper engineering knowledge to do the right thing with the material. When we look at the lightest stems now in the world, well, they're aluminum. They're not carbon. Like, aluminum is an excellent material for a stem, and so.
Yeah, it's pretty pointless to wrap it in carbon.
Well, certainly wrapping it in carbon would be fairly pointless. But even making it out of full carbon, it's very hard to make a full carbon stem that's as light as a full aluminum stem. So, but in the end, what you need is a well-engineered product that will give you enjoyment in riding, and that will give you the safety in riding. And well-engineered also means picking the right material. Sometimes it's carbon, sometimes it's not.
Finally, have you ever, Cervelo are synonymous with performance bikes. Is there ever been any plan, or have you ever thought of looking at other areas of cycling and seeing if there are things that you could bring your sort of design acumen, as it were, to change or to bring forward? I'm thinking about possibly commuting bikes and things like that, or utilitarian cycles.
We have a great personal interest in commuting. I think that is what the bike industry should focus on. Of course, it's not the area that we happen to be in, but Phil and I both have a great interest in commuting bikes.
So maybe one day we'll see the Cervelo commuter.
I don't think you'll see a Cervelo commuter, but I mean, of course, we have it's unavoidable that when you think about things, you come up with ideas, and but I would more think that some of our ideas would be implemented by others than that you will see a Cervelo commuting bike. So,
Well, Gerard Vroomen, thank you very much.
thank you.